Hello and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video myself, Amata. I hope you guys are having a good Saturday so far. As always, I'm here with the latest news from the tech world from the last 24 or so hours as of the 11th of July. So we are going to begin today's proceedings with some news regarding global PC sales. So we have two reports to thank for this particular piece of information, as well as an article written by tomshardware.com about these reports, so you will find that linked below. And the two companies are both Gartner and the International Data Corporation. And basically they are reporting that we are seeing strong global PC shipments. Overall, the year-to-year PC sales growth for 2020's second quarter falls between 3 to 11%, depending on who is actually reporting it. I know that's quite a wide sort of margin to deal with, but unfortunately that is the case. But to get into more specifics, Gartner estimates 2.8% sales growth over the second quarter of last year, which puts sales around 64.8 million units, whereas the IDC is claiming 11.2% sales growth and 72.3 million units worth of sales. Now, there is an important distinction between those two companies in that the IDC measures things like tablets and Chromebooks among mobile computers, but Gartner does not. So essentially what we're seeing here is the second quarter being much stronger, especially in comparison to not only last year, but the first quarter of 2020, which was affected by disrupted supply lines due to, well, everything that's going on right now. And we have some comments from the Gartner research director, Mikako Kitagawa, and she said, quote, "The second quarter of 2020 represented a short-term recovery for the worldwide PC market after the PC supply chain was severely disrupted in early 2020 due to the human malware, shall we say. Some of the growth this quarter was due to distributors and retail channels restocking their supplies back to near normal levels." Now, she also said that mobile PC growth, which is again notebooks, laptops, things of that nature, is, quote, particularly strong. Now, this is most likely due to the huge uptick in people working from home. A lot of people buying cheap solutions for notebooks, laptops, even smaller form factor PC builds, and obviously more beefier PC builds. If you're someone like myself who does a lot of graphics design for their actual 9-to-5 job, you need a machine with a bit of oomph behind it, so that has undoubtedly contributed to this growth. However, obviously this does come with a potential downside, or I guess you could say an expected downside, because she warns that, quote, "This uptick in mobile PC demand will not continue beyond 2020, so this is just like a temporary boost thanks to everyone working from home," essentially is what I'm taking away from this. The IDC research manager Jitesh Ubrani also pointed to work from home and e-learning as the big reasons behind this quarter's growth. And he also warned that there is a chance that we just will not see this continue. He said, quote, "What remains to be seen is if this demand and high level of usage continues during a recession and to the post-human malware world." But we're going to move on from that now to a couple of AMD things up next, the first of which is regarding EPYC Milan. So what we have here is a very interesting leak which was reported by the folks over at Igor's lab. According to their information, at least 3 engineering samples of the EPYC Milan CPU family were spotted, and these include 2 64-core models and a single 32-core model. Now obviously we are going to see more in the complete lineup, but these are what we have for now, and obviously we should keep in mind before I get into the specs in just a moment that these are all engineering samples, so just to keep in mind that they can change before final release. Now with that red tape cautionary stuff out of the way, let's talk facts, shall we? So let's focus on the 2 64-core variants first. So we have some very long OPN codes that are the same at the start, but the difference is at the end. One ends in 114-07, one's end in 114-09, and these are an A0 stepping. Now these 64-core parts are based on an A+1 die configuration, so that means 8 Zen 3 CCDs, and we do see in terms of the configuration, 64 cores, 128 threads, 2 megs of L1, 32 megs of L2, and 256 megs of L3. Now, at the moment, the variable clock speeds are 3 GHz max and 1.2 GHz at the lowest. But again, these are early engineering samples, so do not take these clock speeds as read or as final, because they absolutely will change before the product actually sees a store shelf. Now, the other variant ends in 117-03 and has a layout of 32 cores, 64 threads. And in terms of the cache, you see 1 meg of L1, 16 megs of L2, and 128 megs of L3. It is a 4+1 die configuration. In terms of the clock speed, we do see 3 GHz maximum frequency and TDP of 180 watts. Now, of course, very recently we did see another EPYC Milan part actually leak out, and this particular part did feature lower clock speeds than what we're talking about now, so it's very likely that that was an even earlier engineering version than what we're talking about now, and obviously I would fully expect yet another leak to be found later on down the line, and we'll see some improvements and so on, and eventually we will most likely see the final details leak, benchmarks and such. Now, just to remind you, according to our sources that we have heard at least, IPC gains are roughly 17% on average, and AMD themselves have also confirmed that Zen 3, which obviously again is powering Milan, is going to bring with it a brand new CPU architecture, and this will obviously help deliver that significant IPC gain that I just mentioned, alongside faster clock speeds, higher core counts and so on and so on. Now let's move on from that to our next AMD topic for today, which is regarding once again Threadripper Pro. Now this time around it is the final specifications have leaked for the Threadripper Pro 3000 series, thanks to the guys over at videocards.com. Of course, you can find their article in the description below, as usual. So, AMD is launching 4 Ryzen Threadripper Pro processors, which obviously have Zen 2, and is going to support up to 128 PCIe 4 lanes, which is double which we saw on the consumer series. Now also, which is pretty interesting and kind of cool, because it has the Pro nomenclature, it is obviously going to have AMD Pro technologies such as Pro Security, Pro Manageability and Pro Business Ready. But let's talk facts and specs, shall we? So, the first chip I want to talk about is the very top of the stack, the Threadripper Pro 3995WX. 64 cores, 128 threads, 2.7 GHz base and 4.2 GHz boost, 288 megs of L2 plus L3 cache, 128 lanes and a 280 watt TDP. As for the one lower down, it is the 3975WX, 32 cores, 64 threads, 3.5 GHz base and 4.2 GHz boost, 144 megs of L2 plus L3, and of course the same TDP and lanes supported. As for the next one down the stack is the 3955WX, 16 cores, 32 threads, 3.9 GHz base, 4.3 GHz boost, 72 megs of L2 plus L3 this time, and the same once again for the lanes and TDP. And for the final one that I want to talk about today, it is the 3945WX, 12 cores, 24 threads, 4 GHz base and 4.3 GHz boost, 70 megs of L2 plus L3, and once again the same on the rest. Now, unfortunately, the big thing that we just don't know about these chips is how much they're going to cost. But we are expecting to see this series debut on July the 14th, which is obviously next week. So we'll likely see the release date and pricing confirmed. I mean, these are Threadripper Pro parts, so spoiler alert, they're not going to be cheap. And something cool that I wanted to quickly mention is an interesting announcement from both IMEC and Global Foundries, who have announced a hardware demonstration of a new AI chip, which is based on IMEC's AIMC, or Analog in Memory Computing Architecture, which utilizes Global Foundries 22FDX solution, and is basically designed to perform deep neural network calculations on in-memory computing hardware. And I have some interesting comments from Diederik Verkest, the program director for machine learning over at IMEC, and he said, quotes, the successful tape out of ANIA, the Analog Inference Accelerator, marks an important step forward towards validation of analog in-memory computing. The reference implementation not only shows that analog in-memory calculations are possible in practice, but they achieve an energy-efficient 10 to 100 times better than digital accelerators. In IMEC's machine learning program, we tune existing and emerging memory devices to optimize them for analog in-memory computation. These promising results encourage us to further develop this technology with the ambition to evolve towards 10,000 TOPS. Global Foundries collaborated closely, said Hiren Mujmadar, Vice President of Project Management for Computing and Wired Infrastructure over at Global Foundries, to implement the new ANIA chip for using our low-power, high-performance 22FDX platform. The test chip is a critical step forward in demonstrating to the industry how 22FDX can significantly reduce the power consumption of energy-intensive AI and machine learning applications. So essentially in the future, Global Foundries is going to include AIMC, which again is analog and memory computing, as a feature able to be implemented on their 22FDX platform as a solution in the AI market space. And this 22FDX platform utilizes 22nm FDSOI technology, and again it is designed to give as much performance as possible at extremely low power, with the ability to operate at 0.5 volt ultra low power at 1 picoamp per micron for ultra low standby leakage. You can find the full press release, which was reported by videocards.com, linked in the description below this video alongside everything else. Anyway, we're going to move on now to some very interesting comments from Xbox's Phil Spencer. So this time around, Phil Spencer was talking to GamesIndustry.biz, and the part of that interview that I want to focus on today is the part where he discussed next-gen exclusives. Now, Microsoft have already said that Xbox Series X games will also come out on the Xbox One for at least a year. And the interview kind of touched on the topic whether or not Microsoft is kind of hamstringing developers by forcing them to support the Xbox One. And obviously Phil Spencer rejects the idea that the Xbox Series X will be anyway held back by this. He said, quote, frankly, held back is a meme that gets created by people who are too caught up in a device competition. The diversity of hardware choice in PC has not held back the highest fidelity PC games on the market. The highest fidelity PC games rival anything that anybody has ever seen in video games. So this idea that developers don't know how to build games or game engines or ecosystems that work across a set of hardware, there's a proof point in PC that shows that's not the case. And further on the interview, he obviously discussed Sony's strategy, which obviously is next-gen exclusive focused. Now obviously we are most likely going to see some crossover, like for example late releasing PS4 games like Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima and so on. They're obviously going to be on the PS5 as well, because why wouldn't they? But obviously there is going to be quite a lot of PS5 exclusives like Horizon Forbidden West. And he said that their focus is, quote, completely counter to what gaming is about. But don't let me put words on his mouth. Let's read the full quote to get some context for what he said. He said, quote, as a player, you are the center of our strategy. Our device is not the center of our strategy. Our game is not the center of the strategy. We want to enable you to play the games you want to play with the friends you want to play with on any device. Gaming is about entertainment and community and diversion and learning new stories and new perspective. And I find it completely counter to what gaming is about to say that part of that is to lock people away from being able to experience those games, or to force someone to buy my device on the day that I want them to go buy it in order to partake in what gaming is about. Now this is not a new view for Microsoft by any means. This is very in line with everything they've done in the last couple of years. Microsoft don't care what system you play on as long as you are in their ecosystem. If you're on the Xbox One, cool. If you're on the Xbox One X or S, cool. If you're on the Xbox Series X, also cool. If you're on PC gaming, great. That is why they push things like Game Pass and crossplay and smart delivery and all this stuff so hard, because just they want you in that ecosystem. That's it. Now, he does have a point about PC games and the absolutely pretty much infinite amount of setups that you can have on PC games, and obviously developers have to kind of account for that, which is obviously why we have different graphic settings, and you can turn all the bells and whistles off and take it right down to the lowest, grimiest settings if you so desire. But the main reason I'm concerned about the policy is, as customer friendly as it is and as awesome as it is that people aren't going to be forced to buy the next gen consoles to play next gen games, there is a significant difference, I think, between this upcoming generation and the current generation, in that, well, I think we're going to see a big shift in how games are developed, because we have such changes in comparison, like, you know, the SSDs that are in place, and obviously the consoles are supporting ray tracing and stuff like that. So I feel like that does kind of put a wrinkle in this statement of his, but obviously we'll have to wait and see how true his statements end up being. So we're going to finish up with just a very quick couple of things, first of which is a Far Cry 6 leak. Now, obviously, in just a couple of days, Ubisoft are hosting their Ubisoft Forward event, and they're going to be revealing their big games. This is probably when we're going to finally see some actual real gameplay for things like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I'm actually really looking forward to, because I'm a massive weeb for anything Viking related. And today we have a leak via Hong Kong PSN for Far Cry 6. Now, obviously this is a leak, so do take everything here with a pinch of salt, but according to this leak, we are going to be seeing Far Cry 6 come out on the 18th of February, and we are also seeing a Latin America setting this time around, and we're going to be seeing the Breaking Bad actor Giancarlo Esposito, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly, as the main villain of Far Cry 6. Now, unsurprisingly, from the leak, it pretty much shows that it's going to follow the formula of pretty much every Far Cry game ever. For the last few years, you're going to be fighting against a dictator in a tropical paradise. Sounds familiar. Anyway, last thing I want to discuss is a bit of a rumour for Capcom. So basically, the new rumour is that Capcom is working on some new fighting games, specifically Marvel vs. Capcom 4 and Street Fighter 6. Now, the source for this rumour is the EVO World Champion Ryan Ramirez. Now, this hasn't actually been confirmed, so as always, do take it with a pinch of salt, TM. Now, if these rumours are true, and I won't be surprised if Capcom are working on them because, well, Capcom like money, I just hope they have learned from everything that happened with Street Fighter 5. The launch of that was nothing short of a disaster, so I just hope that they have learned from that. We'll see. Anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, do remember to like and subscribe. Your support really does mean a huge deal to both myself and Paul, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.